It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstide Network, this show where we look at the dollars and the cents and the royal edicts of the sports business industrial complex. How you doing today, Steve?
I am doing very well, thank you. Been totally swamped at work, but that's okay. That is how life goes sometimes. Um, have you seen the continuing saga of Journey? We skipped a week, so it's been off 2 weeks now. But in that time, there's just been more and more drama. Have you seen this?
I no, I am not familiar with the details. I have a ambient understanding that there's constant strum and churn with the Journey brand, but I do not know the current particulars.
Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon, of course, hate each other and constantly sue each other. But the latest one was that the lead singer Ornel Pineda, who's the guy who was maybe two down the road from Steve Perry, quit the band, but then the band would not contractually let him out of his contract because their touring contracts apparently specified that Ornel Pineda had to be the vocalist. And so now they're dragging him back for this, cycle of abuse, which is their, theoretical farewell tour for the lead singer who doesn't want to be there at all, but is contractually obligated to do it. And then you got the keyboard player and the guitarist suing each other, all on a national tour. It's awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
real stage energy vibes, I guess, right?
Exactly. I mean, what they're going to pretend
They
that they
should
all
just
love
lean
each other?
into it and just call it like the contractually obligated tour, and
I think Neil Sean's got way too much ego to do that.
yeah, that guy is a piece of work, apparently.
Yeah, and he looks like he's had about 15 too many Botox shots in his face too.
Yeah, no, he's a weird dude. He's a weird dude.
Because I think your family has, you've said on the air, your wife is involved in the music industry, and so I
Yes.
don't know if you've come across him or not.
Oh, they've had a few interactions, but I'll just leave it at that.
You
Yeah,
might
no,
have to tell me off the air
yeah,
because I'm interested.
he's a weird dude. Not weird in like a, like some of the weird we might talk about later on in the show, but just like as a egomaniac rock star, not high on his own supply, like mainlining junkie of his own supply. So,
Yes, pretty
um,
much.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
we're
he's
not going
a
to compare him to. We've got a later story about Vince McMahon. We're not
right.
comparing him to
There's
Vince
all
McMahon.
kinds of different weirds. Weird's a spectrum. Um, yeah, but and I guess it's they're such a funny story in some ways because one, they really shouldn't even be bringing. They shouldn't be like at all relevant in 2026, and in many ways they are not. But that when you have a song, when you have a couple songs like those that penetrate the culture so deeply for so many decades, it's like guarantees you a state of relevance. But then also to be, as you said, two to three to who knows 12 singers past the singer of said legendary songs is a really bizarre journey.
Yeah, well, because they had, I forget the guy. I know there's been at least there was one guy before Pineda, and then the drummer has a really, really good voice. And so I know, and he was doing it for a while. So there's at least two. But I think you said it when you've got a song like Don't Stop Believing, it's,
Yeah,
a cultural icon almost.
it's a standard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and they used it for the final scene of The Sopranos, which is one of the bigger shows of all time. And there's others. So yeah, they're just never. I mean, I think you could get they could pull a foreigner if they wanted to and replace every person in the band and just get up there and play those songs and they would sell. Look at Foreigner.
You just
It's
need
a
a
it's a
Neil
sunken
Sean's
cover.
headband. Somebody has to wear Neil Sean's headband.
But the songs are so good you could literally get anybody out there and play them. Somebody would go.
Yeah, yeah, it's just karaoke at this point.
I
Um,
refuse to go to Foreigner concerts anymore because it's just a cover band. But
yeah, right. At least just own it. Steve, you're not on social media, so you won't enjoy. You wouldn't have been had a chance to enjoy this. But one of the bits I do when I'm traveling is I catalog all of the rock teas. Now you would probably debate my definition of rock tea. I'm saying anything in the
You have a
pop music
Rock
world.
Hall of Fame definition of rock tea.
Well, I mean, it depends how you're. Do I have like there's a coolness factor, but then if you just look for
Well,
repeaters,
they just put Sade in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I probably have a broader view of. I just rock to me is a synony. Rock can be. I don't want to be absolutist. Can be a synonymous with just modern teenage pop music that was born in 1952.
okay,
But regardless, I'm just a scientist. I'm just observing. I'm not but I just collect. So I did see everything from. So, and then I post them all. I saw everything from Celine Dion to Gotthard, a Swedish metal band. Like I saw like like that's what actually makes me the most interested is the weird range. Now, your Metallicas, your Nirvanas, and ACDC. Those are the Mount Rushmore. Those are the in terms of numbers, right? Those are
right.
the top three, just quantitatively. But I saw a range, and there's always a category that I call so metal I can't read the T-shirt where the font is in so ridiculous that you
It's like an
and I can't
ancient
yeah
Aramaic. Yeah.
and I'm not like okay, I can't go oh excuse me sir I catalog
So
rock
are you
teas I see
taking like subtle pictures of people on
I don't
street
picture because
corners?
I'm privacy first I will have like my notes app open and just jot it down
I
and
saw 5 Metallica t-shirts.
yes
Okay.
and then if it's something if I can get a sneaky shot because it's something I really have to capture and look up I may occasionally use that
So you
but
saw
mostly
a
I just
Celine Dion
I saw,
shirt?
yeah, Celine Dion, which is almost as weird as some of the like metal ones. But I saw Thin Lizzy.
Hey, I'm all about Thin
Yeah, I
Lizzy.
love
That's
Thin
cool,
Lizzy.
man.
So that I mean, that's one. You don't see Thin Lizzy
Well,
every day.
I've seen a lot of like really, really younger people, like 20 and under, that are wearing like Def Leppard and Guns
The
N'
Rock
Roses
T is
shirts now.
huge.
Yeah.
The
I
Rock
don't
T
know
is
if they even know
huge.
who any of those bands even are, but
And then in a couple of these cities, I'll find like the T-shirt shop or whatever. Like, and it's like, oh, here's the Rock T spawning ground. These are where all the kids are getting their tees. But the
I,
range is wild. I saw some like obscure hardcore, some very obscure metal, but even just stuff that's like it is a wild. Of course, you have your
and
I did
what,
see the ACDC grandma. She was with a walker, hunched over with a too large ACDC T-shirt
listen,
and hat.
that might have been a shirt she has had since 1976, you know, since 50 years ago. Um, since you brought it up, I would just like to point out that once again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has embarrassed themselves. I wasn't kidding when I said they're electing Sade this year. They finally put Iron Maiden in, who Iron Maiden's a band who actively like makes a point to say they don't care.
They've officially announced they're not going.
Well, and they're touring
Yeah.
Australia, so nobody should be surprised they're not doing that. But I don't know how, in what world, Sade belongs in any sort of rock and roll hall of fame. If they would just change the name to Modern Music Hall of Fame, I'm fine with it. But I also think at some point you keep doing 7 bands a year, whatever. At some point,
I think it's more. It's more than that.
well, however many there, several bands. At some point, you're running out of bands that really should be in any sort of Hall of Fame. You can't convince me that Joy Division, New Order should be in anybody's Hall of Fame of anything, for
Oh, I,
example.
I would disagree with that one. But I mean, my stance is unchanged. Halls of Fame for artistic output are dumb.
Well, they are dumb,
Yeah.
but especially when
And yes,
it's
this
not
is the
like you're
pop and
grad.
rock Hall
Yeah,
of Fame.
but they
Yes.
need to just say it and admit it. What annoys me is a long time, lifelong rock fan and musician. It really greatly annoys me. But more than that, I mean, the NFL, for example, they have 40 or 50 people retiring each year, right? Maybe not that many, but several retiring each year, and it's continuing supply. But there's a limited amount of rock bands or any bands, any musicians every year. So at some point, I think they've long ago run out of bands and musicians who should be in a Hall of Fame, even if you wanted to have a Hall of Fame. That's my point.
Well, they've also started to get more modern and modern. Or maybe we just gotten older and older, but it feels like the time between when you can, you
In the
can.
meantime, they refuse to honor like Styx and Boston and bands like that.
That's why. I know it.
Motley
Just make
Crue
a
should be in
museum.
there, you know.
Just call
Yeah.
it a museum, and then you do the metal wing, or you have a special exhibit on
I,
80s metal. Like you just make a cool museum and everything that that's what I'm saying. Like the best
The Hall of
of
Fame is
for artistic
stupid.
output is it's subjective. Celebrate its subjectivity and the intricacies of its
Yeah.
rather than like, making everything a hierarchy.
It's stupid. The whole thing is dumb. I refuse to ever go to it and
Oh, I would
renew my
definitely
money.
go, but
I wouldn't go. No, I'm
I
stubborn like that, though.
it holds no value
I
in
don't know if
my
you
artistic
realize that I'm
ranking.
a stubborn person, Chris. If you ever, I don't know if I've ever pointed that out on the show before.
I don't. Certainly demonstrated it. um, well, I could talk rock teas and debate music culture all day, but we do have actually a good amount of. This was one of those stretches where we had to winnow down, not search up. But we'll kind of lead with this one. Is Trump going to fix college sports, Steve?
No, but he's going to try.
Yeah.
So we did a story, one show we missed a week. So maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, maybe where President Trump was at some sort of college football event. I can't remember what it was. But in there, he kind of off the top of his head said, I'm going to do an executive order to fix college sports. And we kind of laughed at that and,
Well,
sure.
Didn't
But
isn't this technically the second one? Isn't there like kind of a lighter weight one that came before this? I thought that the article that we has that in there.
I'll let you look that up while we're doing this because he did, in fact, issue an executive order on April 3rd, 2026. The order is called Urgent National Action to Save College Sports. And so this thing, we're not going to read, it's long, so we're not going to read the whole thing word for word here, but goes into sort of introduction thing that says, college sports has provided scholarships and life-changing educational and athletic leadership opportunities. It's a primary revenue generator for university athletic departments. College football is, it goes into a little bit of current state of pay for play, eligibility, and some other things. And so and they're recognizing here what is out of control, which is what we talked about, to use the words in the executive order, the out of control finances, now the out of control NIL and um, the issues with athletes being, are they employees, are they not employees, are they getting paid? And so he's issued an executive order. Now it sounds kind of dumb off the top of your head, like at first glance, to say the president can issue an order that will affect college football or college athletics. But where this is going, and I got to say, I don't know if you know this, Chris, but I have a lot of experience with federal grants, never DOE grants, but I've done a lot of them and I've been involved with a lot of them. And you can they oftentimes do tie executive orders to grants. And what it'll say is, for this grant, the recipient must obey executive order number 86752. And it'll be something like this. And so what this is doing here is saying anybody who is getting a federal grant has to do these things. And so in that respect, that could be legal. However, problem, of course, is that none of the federal grants that exist currently reference this executive order. Okay. So what the president can't do is just order people around. But what this is saying is federal grant funds cannot be used unless you're doing this. And so they're going to add this to future grants. So that's how this could be affected. But so some of to get to the important part here, that the main section here says that as of August 1st, 2026, excuse me, it says agency heads that contract with or provide grants to higher education institutions shall, as appropriate, evaluate violations of the applicable lawful and operative interstate intercollegiate athletic governing body rules in effect as of August 1st, 2026, concerning the following to determine whether they are cause so serious or compelling in nature as to affect the present responsibility of the recipient. Then eligibility limits, transfers between institutions, revenue sharing, permissible and improper financial activities. And so what they're then saying is these same athletic interstate intercollegiate athletic governing bodies shall update or clarify their rules to adequately protect opportunities, including the following: age-based eligibility limits to promote fairness. And so, in other words, a 29-year-old, 32-year-old athlete cannot hypothetically be a college athlete. Participation in college athletics is permitted for no more than a 5-year period, with limited exceptions for military service, missionary service, or other periods of absence. So your Mormon mission crowd, and if you get drafted, that kind of thing. Professional athletes cannot return to college athletics. Transfer related rules that provide for the ability to transfer one time during the 5-year period with immediate playing eligibility, and one additional time if the student athlete obtains a 4-year degree, meaning those people who come back for master's degrees. Prioritize the academic development, success, and graduation and long-term well-being of student athletes, and ensure that the transfer window does not incentivize interference with athletic seasons or the academic year, or otherwise undermine the integrity of participation and competition in college athletics. Then medical care for student athletes, which is interesting. Something we talked about a little bit. Let's stop there. And then it's going into revenue sharing between higher education institutions, student athletes, which is clearly an issue. Prohibition on use of federal funds for NIL, which is definitely worthwhile. Prohibition on improper financial activities regarding student athletes, for pay for play. A national student athlete agent registry and reasonable protection for student athletes from excessive commissions. Now let's stop there. So your thoughts so the big picture is how he's trying to do it is saying, if you get into federal grants, you have to do all these things.
Yeah, he's using a power of the purse.
Right. So your thoughts?
Well, one, he did have this is the second. There was one in last July of 25, from the article, but the order's true impact remains unclear and is in doubt, considering that Trump's previous executive order released in July has created no real results within the industry. But this one is, however, more comprehensive, as Steve has sort of described, and direct, as opposed to the last one, which only directed his cabinet members to create rules, blah, blah, blah. So this is the second one. This one has the most teeth. Well, no, what's clear is that, people that knew the topic wrote this one, but it's also a laundry list of what everybody wants to see happen, so it's got everything on there. It's got everything on there from as woke lefty as the health coverage and the revenue sharing and things.
That's not a woke lefty thing. I mean,
I'm making a joke. But
okay.
It is pushing towards needing some kind of collective bargaining.
Yes.
So, like, if it
doesn't say that, but it's sort of right.
But my point is that those bullet points live right next to, in this laundry list, things that I could make a tongue-in-cheek joke that come from a more rightist perspective. My point is, it's kitchen sinked. Everything that anyone's ever talked about that might help to bring sanity to college sports is just in there. It doesn't make, so like, it's just a deep dive, comprehensive list. It's almost like you give 5 people, each have 3 ideas, and you all get on the list.
It's kind of like a wish list of how to fix college sports. Basically.
Exactly.
And this, I didn't read it, but this does have a section where it encourages Congress to pass comprehensive legislation.
Well, I think that's its biggest, and the article says this as well. That's its biggest goal. If it can force a passing of the SCORE Act, that means it will have done its job effectively.
Because all of these executive orders like this that the Trump administration has issued, all of them end up in court. And we're not getting political here, but sometimes it's just, some of it, part of it is just the people who hate Donald Trump are going to sue him, every time. This is probably not that. This is probably, the people running NILs and the people who are benefiting financially from this. They're going to go run to some, what they think is a jurisdiction that's going to lean either anti-Trump or pro NIL, and they might get a TRO or a TI, temporary injunction against this, and I'll have to go to an appellate court. I mean, Trump said that he said
it. I mean, this is that. Yeah. He even said, "I hope we get the right judge." So like
And that's the whole trick, right? I mean, because it's not an accident where these cases that people are filing that are claiming presidential executive orders are unconstitutional. They're selecting the venues intentionally, and for venues they think will be pro anti executive order. And so this is going to be. But he's got a lot of great ideas. Yes, it's a kitchen sink thing for sure. And it doesn't mention collective bargaining because I think his constituents would probably hate him if he put that in there, but it does kind of go down the road of, if there's, healthcare and, financial stuff in here, it sort of goes
defining
down
the
the road
benefits of said players plus the revenue sharing model that the bosses need to enact is, those are cobblestone paths to collective
well,
bargaining.
and yeah, and plus, I mean, the latest round of litigation goes down that road as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I understand why it's there, but it is odd. So yes, they know they're going to get sued. I think it's actually even an effective strategy to invite the lawsuit, right? Like, at some point there's going to be
Oh, he's leaning
some,
into it.
yeah, adjudication of this, right? And that's probably the biggest payoff to the universities in his ear, right? Like, well, if someone can just, the NCAA can't do it, right? So they've already said hands off. They're asking any government, they're going to any government agency or part of the three branches of the federal government to give them ways
NCAA
out,
is pathetically
right?
weak and
So they'll take
unorganized.
anybody's oversight, but so I think that the lawsuit is all part of the plan. But I do think this is a part that kind of cracks me up. Talk about foxes in the hen house, right? The oversight committee includes 6 presidents and chancellors from Georgia, Nebraska, Tennessee, Kansas, Utah, and North Carolina, with then individual members who, former Clemson president, and including, and I don't even mean this from a political standpoint, I just mean in terms of like, let's look at the states named, Florida Governor Ron
Well, you're
DeSantis.
talking about all the
Yes,
big teams in the
right.
college
So I'm talking
football. It's not political at all.
right. So no, not at all. I'm saying these are the people that have the most
It's
interest in
kind of
having
like,
governance
letting the
over this.
mob
Yes.
run the Justice
Fox in the
Department.
hen house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think it's funny. Like, take names out: Georgia, Nebraska, Tennessee, Kansas, Utah, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida.
See, this has Nick Saban written all over it.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Because
And he
didn't we
probably brought the
decide
person in to write it too.
yeah, didn't we decide that Nick Saban was
He's the
Trump's
whisperer
buddy?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, Now I applaud the effort, because somebody needs to try to fix it. And yeah, this is part of this is just, well, no matter how you feel on the Donald Trump spectrum, I think we can all admit that he's an egomaniac. Whether you support him, you love him, or hate him, he's an egomaniac. And I think some of this is he wants to be seen as the guy who fixed college sports. Some of it's that, but in all honesty, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt here, college sports is a train wreck right now. A train wreck of the NCAA's, born of the NCAA's utter and total incompetence, along with the state of California deciding players had to be paid. Those two things, and this does go a long way. But I fully agree that the SCORE Act would solve a lot of these problems. Because for those of you who don't understand this, a presidential executive order is not the law of the land, quote unquote. Okay. Now he has some statutory authority to order the executive branch to do certain things, but he cannot just by fiat impose executive orders on everybody. As an example, so in the last administration for COVID, the Biden administration tried to figure out ways to impose mask mandates on everybody. And it went so far as to saying anybody who's an employer with over, I forget the number, like 20 employees or something, must have mask mandates. And that got thrown out of court because there's just no statutory authority for the executive branches by fiat doing that. And so this is one of those things. But again, what they can do is attach all this to federal grant agreements, which they absolutely will do going from this moment forward. And so in that regard, they can dictate this, but it would be much better if Congress just passed the SCORE Act.
And that's, well, yes, the SCORE, if you want some rules and policies to re-regulate college sports, then the SCORE Act is we can debate many things on the edges, but it in full a pretty decent attempt at that. Let's just leave it
Yes.
there. Um,
Of course, Congress is utterly incompetent in every
it
possible
can't
way.
even get out of committee. So
Yeah, right.
so there's where that is.
They can't even agree on budgets, much
No,
less like something like the SCORE Act.
but if you kind of would like to see the Constitution work as written, you would be rooting for this kind of oversight to come from Congress.
Yeah, you wouldn't want this by fiat from the executive branch necessarily. Now, again, I mean, what's the ironic part of this is that the bitter end of this points out the obvious, which is that they're tying this to DOE, right? The cost of this order should be borne by Department of Education, and all these grants, most of them, not all, but most of them are going to come through Department of Education. Well, the Trump administration is trying to terminate the Department of Education, and get rid of it. So this is one instance where he's using DOE, even though he doesn't want DOE to exist.
Well, yeah, we'll get to the McMahons later. Yes,
meaning the Secretary of Department of Education, since McMahon's wife, Linda McMahon's.
But yeah, or you create the need for the agency to exist to do nothing but regulate college sports. You could definitely see that as the end game, because you create the need. But anyway, we'll see how that all goes.
My natural anti-governmental bent says we don't want a department, a executive branch department governing college sports, though.
No,
I'm not sure they have a federal law that says this is how it's going to be handled.
Right. Yeah. This is what we know we're on the bad news track, but they keep printing money too. So like there's no financial incentive for college sports to change. And like we said before, the NCAA has invited any government agency that will return their phone calls to come in and be invited into their business. So
they're
all
too incompetent to know what they're even asking for, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we'll see where this goes. I actually think, I think this one, I think it could help the SCORE Act move forward, and I do think that it was, is fairly well framed and could provide at least a schema for what the way forward might be. And at this point, I think that we'll take it from wherever it comes to some degree. But again, until they stop making money, it won't matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, and let's forget about whether you guys out there are pro-Trump, anti-Trump. Forget that, and the following things are good, right? Let's get to this. Age limits. Okay, nobody wants a 30-year-old out there playing college football. Transfer rules. You can't keep transferring. When somebody hands you more money on the NIL transfer window.
So I just heard a great common sense rule for that, actually.
Okay,
by a sports journalist. I think a guy who used to be the head of the football writers union, whatever. He's a longtime sports journalist. He said they should just make the rule where you get one freebie, and then any transfer past your first freebie, right? Your one get out of jail free card is back to the year benched, right? Is the year sit out. So just okay, everyone gets one, right? Like because you can't. There's no genie back in the bottle situation. But then if you want to go too deep, you're sitting out a year, and you just give everyone 5 years of eligibility as a rule, but no extensions past 5.
Well, this says all of that with the exception of the 1 year sit out. So that's what this exactly. 80% of what you just said is in this order, and then prioritize academic development and success. A little vague, but certainly something that these universities are utterly not doing at all right now. And I don't know how you'd implement that, but that's certainly something that needs to be done. Ensure that the transfer window doesn't incentivize interference with athletic seasons. The medical care for student athletes. If you're going to tear your ACL for the University of Georgia or whatever, University of Georgia ought to have an ongoing obligation to ensure it's sort of like a VA claim.
Right.
For those of you who know how the VA works, basically, if you get an injury in the military, then the VA will take care of you for life, for the injury that's service connected. Same thing here. If you break your ankle pick your injury in the name of college sports, they really ought to have an ongoing obligation to treat you for it. And that's what this is getting at. All this stuff is great, are great ideas, more or less.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, I think it's to me, it really is just like the White House, so to speak, or the executive branch just throwing in
Oh, it
its
is.
wish list to the conversation. But anything that moves the conversation to some level of
Yeah.
sanity is a positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did
And
think
we'll
it was
see.
funny though, going back to the foxes in the henhouse. You also noticed that there were no private university representatives in there, right? Because that's
Yeah.
a you don't see Notre Dame, you don't see Stanford, right? Because because they don't necessarily need as much of that federal money, and they're not as plugged into
But they're
that.
all getting it,
They
though.
are, but they're not in
Not
that
much
system like
less.
federal,
Right.
state school, right? It's not
No,
the same.
every university gets federal grants, but it's a lot less. And something like a very, very wealthy university like Notre Dame, for example, could probably just dump, they could probably find enough rich
Yeah.
boosters. They could just dump the DOE grants entirely and probably survive. They wouldn't want to, but they probably could. And if that happens, then this order wouldn't apply to them at all.
No, the big state systems are the ones that have to be in the conversation because they have the most to lose.
Yeah. So in other words, so if you could get, if the SCORE Act, for example, I don't think the SCORE Act had eligibility limits in it, but it might have, but if you could get in federal law to say something like 5-year eligibility limit, 5-year window for athletes to play in college football, that would apply to everybody. Now, the question would be, does the federal government have the authority to do that? And is that within the scope of their constitutional? I mean, we'd have to go down that road too. So let's end on this. Who's going to oppose this? That's a good question, right? Because they've gotten the major universities involved, Nick Saban's involved. Who's going to be the one to sue against this? Is it going to be boosters, NIL collectives? Who's going to be the one to bring it to court? That's just the one. This is probably the big question.
The big NIL collectives have the most to lose.
Right.
So I mean, so you probably so that's and there's probably just there's because this one is a tough call in terms of the federal government and the executive branch's authority here. I could see people that don't really care about the subject at all bringing it up because it's an interesting case study.
Well, I just mean like he's issued some orders on, and we're not going to go down this road in this show because it's beyond the scope of it, but like on gender ideology and immigration and stuff. And again, we're not going to debate it here, but obviously there's special interest groups and nonprofits and everything that have vested interest in those issues.
I mean,
right?
they must all get sued, right? Yeah. So
What I'm saying is a lot of these orders have a much more obvious.
Well, I think so. Then I would say the NIL collectives, private universities.
But those NIL collectives at the end ought to be able to be controlled by their universities. They really ought to be.
And they're.
I mean,
they would claim they're willing to in
control.
different scenarios, but not this one, right? So like, they would parse a bunch of the pathways to that.
All I'm saying is, I think there's a less obvious group of opposition to this as to some of his other executive orders. That's what I'm saying. Because the one on like gender ideology, for example, I mean, love it. We're not going to debate it, but there's the obvious who support it and the obvious who oppose it. That's what I'm saying. And this is, yes, I agree. NIL collectives have the most to lose, but at the end of the day, again, I mean, University of Georgia ought to be able to go to its collectives and say stop.
Yeah, and they'll argue for I think. That's why the laundry list, that's why the kitchen sink part of this is somewhat interesting to me. I mean, we didn't even mention it, but it also has all these carve outs and protections on women's and Olympic sports.
Yeah, I skipped that, but I mean, they're going down that road too. Yeah.
So it's got something for everybody, right? So might be part of a hedge against why would you be against this, right? There's it's almost like there's pork for all kinds of constituents in here.
It's very, very comprehensive. And as a matter of fact, the section that has all these, that's sort of the meat of the order. The section is called Protecting Women's and Athletic and Olympic Sports and Preserving Higher Education Financial Responsibility. And so that's the name of the section. So yeah, it's talking about that too.
So I
We just
mean,
kind
it
of
makes
overlooked it.
makes it a little hard to, like, who's, to your point, who's against it, and that's why, you know. And the only thing here, this really does walk a tightrope. The only one that kind of is named as kind of a predatory element as is the NIL collectives.
Yeah. Well, and aren't they the
Yeah, I'm not saying
predators?
that's a
I mean,
incorrect
yeah,
assessment. I'm just saying it's the only villain they cast in this
yeah.
document.
And of course, it's a villain of their own creation.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Talk about villains of your own creation. You know, Steve, we've been talking about the Saudi influence on sports, global sports culture, American sports culture, sports business, sports governance, sports funding. Uh, and I think we even we may have even predicted this a couple shows ago, or since that
I
Iran
think it
war
might have been a while ago, but yeah,
broke out, but the Saudi money was going to start acting differently. Well, we are seeing Saudi money exiting all of their marquee sports investments, with three concrete examples: Live Golf, their interest in soccer, football, and flag football are the three immediate. Oh, it looks like the Saudi sovereign wealth fund is pivoting away from sports.
yeah. And our third cast member is very upset
And
about the
yeah.
Saudi wealth fund, which is what we're hearing now. You give him I mean, Kobe the dog, of course, what we're talking about, and he has a very visceral reaction to the Saudis being in golf, and that's what it's about. So one story we have on this, Chris, I didn't have stories on the golf one, so if you can maybe find something, but Front Office Sports had soccer, and it's called Saudi PIF drops Al-Hilal soccer team amid sports pivot. And it mentions in here, and it's by Margaret Fleming, dated April 16th. And incidentally, Front Office Sports is going to lock you out of this if you don't look it up properly. But the point here is that Chris is getting at is, after what, 2 years, 3 years, the Saudi investment fund, which is what Saudi PIF is getting, they're going to close down Live Golf. They're getting out of soccer. They close down. They're terminating the flag football thing. So they're sort of getting out of all of their Western sports investments, because the Saudi soccer team, at the end of the day, that's not really Western necessarily, but it's definitely a national sports thing, I guess, that the West is involved in. So I don't know if this is for financial reasons or cultural reasons. I think that's the big question, because Live Golf, the controversy of Live Golf was that you've got the Saudis, who are just culturally totally different and have all kinds of oppressive rules against women and everything else involved in golf. That was the source of the controversy, and now they're getting out of all of it. So the question would be why, but looks like you have something, Chris.
Well, I'm just saying, here's the Live Golf. Players and staff were informed, in the story Sports Business Journal from the 17th, so pretty recently, were informed within the last couple of days that funding is only guaranteed until the end of this current season. Now, they previously, I mean, they're working under a 5-year agreement. So basically, they just last week came in and said, your money now, your money is gone. You don't count on a penny past this current season. So basically, your invoices, and your bills that you have to get through the 2026 Live Golf tournament are, you have that money, but from the day that 2027 Live Golf season, you have no Saudi money. So and they said you better go find it somewhere else. So they're scrambling. I don't really see how
That's not gonna. They're
Live
not
Golf
gonna.
survives.
No,
Way.
it won't. I don't think it's been very successful. I mean, they have we went over their TV contracts on what, the WB network or something.
Well, that's where I think they're using the cloud of war, because I think I think in the end this just didn't end up being that good an investment, and they weren't getting whatever
It's
they
just not
wanted,
working,
money or cultural influence. I think now you can have all kinds of reasons that make sense just on the daily headlines, and so why not pull out now? It's just sort of smart
because the
business.
PGA hasn't lost any modern societal relevance at all. It's the same as it always is. Remember, they were negotiating for PGA and Live Golf to merge, and we did a story on that where they had like reached an agreement in principle on it, but then that died and that
Yeah,
didn't
it was
happen.
backburnered, but now the PGA is going to get this at at the dollar store.
Yeah, and when this happens, what's going to happen is the big name golfers who defected are going to have to come home.
Yeah, and the PGA will welcome them with open arms.
Of course they will.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so Phil Mickelson and whoever else it
it'll be
was.
treat. In fact, it'll be treated as the great return.
Yeah, yeah. And so again, I mean, the question would be, is Saudi doing this for financial reasons, or are they doing it for cultural reasons? And I have a feeling it's probably financial. In the case of the golf, it's just kind of not working.
I, I think they're doing it for probably a mix of whatever their return on investment formula was, which is all of those things, is now underwater. And this is the perfect this is the perfect opportunity to pull out and just say, oh, this just isn't worth it. It's as a region's in chaos.
Yeah. Oh, here's the Sports Business Journal. Yeah, I forgot I had found this one. um, let's see here.
But they are scrambling this. There's Scott O'Neill. It's just so funny because remember just how also like how cavalier they were
It
and
was
the golfers,
arrogance.
yeah, and just like well, it's just
Well, and when you form they were when they formed this, they were flying all the players around on private jets. It was they were acting like the league was established and had a lot of money. Okay. And like if you go to any other startup league, like there's been a bunch of failed startup football leagues, right? And they don't start out acting like they're the bee's knees in terms of finances. USFL kind of did maybe, and it failed because of it. But you can't just start out spending a huge amount of money before you have a market and expect it to succeed. That's not how basic capitalism and free market economy works. So if you wanted to start an alternative golf league, yeah, do you have to pay the Phil Mickels of the world a lot of money? Yes, but you can't just spend money like water because you have no market yet. You have to establish a market before you can come in and spend a lot of money. And it seems to me to be the biggest flaw in how the Saudis set this up.
yeah, I actually think yes. I think the flaw more is in the hands of the players, who were penny wise, dollar foolish, uh, and this all really should have been obvious, even for some of the things you say. You come in, and also, what do the Saudis do? They have enough money to fake it. Right till they make
Yes,
it, and if they
that's what they
decide
did.
halfway through they're not going to make it, they're pull right. So you got blinded. You got blinded by, even because even when this story was breaking, we were poking holes in it, right? There's no TV contracts, there's no,
Yeah, that's what
audience.
we said a
Yeah,
year
yeah.
ago.
So like these players are just, they're rubes.
Well, and guess what? They still don't have any of that stuff. And listen, I mean, just because these golfers don't have pads on or don't carry a basketball around doesn't mean they're any smarter than any other professional athlete. Okay, these are good people who have focused on athletics since they were young children, and a lot of them don't know what the heck they're doing with anything but their sport. Okay, they're not any smarter than football players who are dumb as nails for the most part when it comes to finances and all kinds of stuff. And so I think you just live golf through a bunch of money at some of these players and they go, okay, with no thought whatsoever, will it work, will it not work? And this is where we are. And you're exactly right. I mean, the Saudis could sort of normally you would start off on a low level and kind of build, but they had enough money to fake it. And since they're not making it, it's over.
Yeah, they were at this point. This article says they were in for about 5 billion, which I'm going to choke on this next statement, but really isn't that much in the scheme of things for them. So,
As pathetic as that sounds.
right? So like their loss isn't even that big. I love this quote though, Steve, from this article, but whatever Saudi PIF fund person said, at a board meeting to Live Golf, we're going to need you to focus on increasing the efficiency of investments.
Read, we're spending way too much money.
Yeah. So, and they would Live Golf would be advised to, you probably have to raise some money.
That's a great quote, man. Focus on increasing the efficiency of investments. You people are spending too much of our money.
So yeah, so that's Live Golf. I expect to see more of these stories, and I think it'll be global. I think what I and I don't have what their interests are in something like cricket right in front of me or whatever, but I would
Have you
suspect that it.
ever watched a moment of Live Golf?
I mean, I don't watch really golf,
Oh, you
so
don't? Okay. I've tried, and it's just kind of like watching minor league football a little bit. I mean, the audiences on TV are very small. And granted, they've got some big name players and stuff, but it just doesn't feel like the Masters.
right, and
You know,
also the money that goes in. These things are done on on a cheap dime, right? They're not like so. You if you're used to watching the Masters plus, let's call it 5 to 6 PGA events a year, right?
that's all I'm doing. I'm not that into it.
Whatever. What are they
Yeah.
called? The majors,
The
right?
US Open,
Yeah.
Masters,
If you're
Players
watching that,
Championship.
you're watching that on CBS, right? Or you're
Yeah.
watching the first couple rounds on ESPN or whatever. These are places that know
Golf
how to
Network.
produce,
Yeah.
right? They know how to produce high quality versions of this sport for television and media. And that is part of, I don't, it doesn't matter if you like I'm not talking about like, oh, I don't like this commentator or whatever, but there is a
They know how to
production value.
produce the show.
Yes, that you watch something like Live Golf or any kind of kind of knockoff version, and it's like you know the difference between the legitimate thing and the knockoff.
Well, as an example of this, Netflix was, I think we talked about this last week, did we not? Netflix got criticized for their production of baseball games. Remember?
Yes,
Because they had some manager on and they missed, a key play entirely in whatever their opening day game was. And actually CBS got criticized of their product of their this goes against what you're saying here, but CBS got criticized of their production of the final round of the Masters because they missed Rory McIlroy's winning putt, which they obviously should have captured.
yeah,
And they missed it live.
it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, but so that kind of flows against it. But the point is, have something like that aside, CBS knows how to do it.
My brother-in-law, one of our biggest fans, he was at the Masters this year, and he got two of those gnomes.
Oh,
Have you
really?
seen that the story about the
No,
gnomes?
no.
So they've been doing these like, they're dressed up in like golf wear or whatever. And so they've been selling them. They're big collectibles, whatever. They've been set, like
You're
tchotchke
talking
type
about
thing.
like gnome, like
Yes, like
the
gnomes,
creature, a
yeah, yeah,
gnome. Yeah.
yeah, the red hats, the whole nine. But they're
This
in
is
like
not like a Christie gnome.
no, no. These are bearded gnomes, red hats, the whole nine. And there was a rumor that this was going to be the last year after 5 years, and so it was a crazy thing. And so my brother-in-law was able to finagle. There's two versions. He got them. The resale market on these is like $25,000, like on eBay and whatever.
Can he give me one?
He's too proud of
Is he
them.
willing to give up one?
And
I would
they
sell
do
him,
look
man.
good.
To your brother-in-law, sell that. You can't don't keep $25,000 sitting on your shelf. Sell it.
So it's a funny like kind of like viral or kind of
What's
goofy
your
business
brother-in-law's
story.
name?
Joe.
Your first name, Joe? So Joe, listen, I've been a lifelong gnome fan. I've collected gnomes my entire life. None of them are the Masters one because I haven't gotten a master. I haven't been to the Masters. So if you would send me one, I promise.
You'll take care of it. You'll give it a
And I
good home.
promise it'll have a good home. My fingers aren't crossed, I swear.
The funny thing is, I actually have collected gnomes my whole life. So there's the funny
Oh,
reality
really?
check. Yes. But yeah, it's a funny little story. These things took over. Like the one article I read was like basically the lead was I'm standing in line with 2,000 other people outside the Masters, and no, it's not to get in to watch the golf. It's the line to
How
buy
did
the
he end up
gnome.
getting them?
He's a wheeler and dealer. So he knows how to
So
work it.
you had to buy them.
I think he did have one, but he had like the fast pass to purchase.
Oh, okay.
I think that
And
was the deal.
so, and I don't need to know his finances, but is this something that's, I mean, you said it can be sold on the market for 25 grand ish.
No,
Is he
no, its
paying
retail
that
price
much?
was normal. Like, well,
Retail price, couple
normal
hundred
at
bucks
buying
or whatever. Yeah.
a high end tchotchke at the Masters, right?
Yeah.
Like
Okay. Yeah,
normal's
that's what I'm
relative. But
asking.
no, but its retail price was like I don't
However
know,
much. Yeah.
$300, $400, $500, right? Like not 15,000.
Man, listen, that would be in the hands of an auction house today if I were him. I don't care if I'm collecting gnomes or not.
Maybe you just wait till the official announcement that that was the last year, because so far it's only rumors.
Yeah, you could do that. You
Yeah.
could do that.
All right. Well, there's that. That's a fun gnome side journey. Um,
So the bottom line is, looks like the sliders are getting out of sports entirely, especially LIV Golf, and they're even getting out of soccer.
yeah. So yeah, this is going to be.
And the
There'll be
flag
more to
football
come.
thing was always dumb, and it was never going to go anywhere, and that's over with.
And I would be curious to see if the rumors about owners, the small, like the 3 to 5% of stakes in various pro teams slows down too. That'll be the next front to watch.
Because what we're talking about here are really the things that the Saudi investment fund, and the P stands for something, or call it Saudi investment, but it's Saudi something investment fund, that they are the principal drivers and principal investors in. They do have a lot of little stakes and stuff. And so I would suspect those would probably stay, you, you know, um, but these things that they're involved in are what's going, or that they're involved in principally, rather.
So I think we've talked about gnomes. We talked about a bunch of things. Where now we have to finally get back to circle back to our McMahon thread. Vince, Vince is taking his complete ouster from all things the WWE company pretty hard. It's been a rough couple years for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and athletes behaving badly might be my favorite segment we do on this show. And I'm gonna call him an athlete just because I love the segment so much.
Hey, he did wrestle.
Yeah, he did. Because I think we haven't done an athletes behaving badly for a while. Didn't we do that one, that football player who had gotten a DUI case and was like walking down the street and
Right.
the
And
freeway?
the
Remember
one
him?
we missed was the defensive player that everyone told the Falcons not to draft last year because dot dot dot, and now he looks like he may
Oh,
never
look.
play again.
Yeah,
Or,
shock.
he's on a bad road.
So this edition of athletes behaving badly, focuses on Vince McMahon, who's got yet another uh, graphic with a sexual abuse case filed against him again. And this is from Fox News. Vince McMahon, its title is Vince McMahon faces graphic sexual abuse allegations in new court filing from an ex-WWE employee by Ryan Gaidos, dated April 4th here. And so this is pretty ugly. The name of the woman is Janelle Grant, who sued WWE, McMahon, and then a former executive, John Laurinaitis. And she details claims about how she was allegedly recruited to work for WWE, and then the abuse she encountered, and how WWE leaders did absolutely nothing about it. And so it says she worked at WWE from 2019, 2022, subjected to repeated physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and sexual trafficking perpetuated by McMahon, and that, quote, most senior officials in talent knew about and facilitated the abuse she experienced. And then instead of protecting Mrs. Grant, WWE and McMahon conspired to use this coercive control over to conceal its wrongdoing. She's making allegations of, quote, violent sexual encounters with McMahon. And it says, quote, again, throughout the 3 years, sex was violent, invasive, degrading, and produced injuries that could not heal. Mrs. and It says Mrs. Grant did not raise a complaint concerning her abuse because she lived in a state of duress and was fully under McMahon's control. Her survival ultimately depending on her complete submission to McMahon. Because the obvious answer to this is, well, why didn't you call the police? And people need to understand something about this. One, it's dramatic, and two, what she's alleging here is that if she had done this, McMahon had so much control of her life that she feared for her life. And so sometimes there's a reason these women can't report this stuff immediately. This is like what, the fourth or fifth one of these against McMahon, at least.
I've lost track. In fact, this one
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember is just because there was that story that was from a couple years ago. We covered it at the time, and it was almost like a level up in the allegations. Was that, remember? It was that woman that they basically, it was like a secretary or whatever.
Yeah.
That they basically were keeping as a sex slave and pimping out. Is this
Yes.
the same woman?
I don't know if this
Because
is
it's
the
very
same
similar
woman.
allegations in terms of that, like kind of kept and farmed out. Like there's a there's very similar. Now that doesn't mean he didn't do it for multiple women in this situation, but it's very similar to that one. And at this point, my point is, I can't even
Keep
differentiate or
track of it
track of
all.
these. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it says, by the way, also, it continues on here to say that McMahon pressured her to sign an NDA, a non disclosure agreement, um, in that he assaulted her again after she signed the document. Um, it says the sordid allegations are part of an ongoing lawsuit against the parties. Of course, he's maintaining his innocence. So this goes back. Okay. Um, this might be the same woman actually, because it says in the story, in the Fox story, um, McMahon stepped down as CEO of WWE in 2022 and stepped down from TKO in 24 after the initial lawsuit was filed and maintained his innocence through the process. So I think this might be that woman, but this is by no means the only allegation against him. And listen, this is as ugly as you will ever see. Okay. I mean, there's been other allegations against various people and politicians and things before, um, but I can't remember an uglier, grosser, and more despicable set of allegations against anybody than this. Now, this case needs to be adjudicated. He hasn't been tried. He hasn't been through civil court. But if this is true, and it just smacks of having some ring of truth to it to me, if it is true, then he deserves every bad thing that'll ever happen to him, because this is just the most disgusting thing I've ever heard, honestly.
Yeah, no, I do think this is the same woman that basically is detailed at the last episode of the I think it's Netflix Vince McMahon mini docu
Right.
series, where even after you sat through a couple episodes of some pretty heinous behavior, this one did sort of jump in a level of intensity. But it's so funny, and which I kind of already knew, but that documentary does such a good job of demonstrating was the life imitates art
Imitates life
arts. Yeah,
thing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
whatever the ping pong is
Yeah.
between those two things, because all of this played out on in the squared circle. Like, and he made such he wanted to break down the barriers between what was going on with his casting his family, all of that, like that, like basically cheating in front of his wife who was faked paraplegic in a wheelchair, right? Like, so like it's almost like, yes, of course. Like, so this was just this kind of depravity was just happening outside of
Because
the
let's see, let's see if
theatrics.
we can nail this right. So it was art imitating life, which was in turn imitating art again. And so it's like, I ping pong. I think we've gone back and forth 3 times on it. But yeah, he did. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, um, much, but you're right. And the last time we did this, we went into some detail about that, in that these storylines played out live on the shows, including McMahon was all involved in the stories. And what this shows is that allegedly he was doing the exact same things in real life, only far worse, maybe, than as he was cast to do on the shows.
Yeah,
I don't know how
the veil
WWE.
is thin.
I don't know how WWE as a product survives this. Honestly, I mean,
I
I
think
wouldn't watch it
he's
anymore.
he's been. I mean, but they can claim. I mean,
I know,
they
but
can
I
claim they
mean,
moved on. I mean, they in fact as corporate brand transitions go, it's a master class in steering through this.
I mean, the touring WWE stuff is exactly the same as popular as it ever was. They have multiple different. I've forgotten, and we did stories on what their current media deals are. I can't remember it right here what it is,
Well, it's
but
that TKO parent company, and they've got
yeah,
some MMA stuff, the WWE
right,
stuff, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, it seems to be succeeding. But I mean, man, I mean, this is it's some of the grossest things I've ever heard.
No, it's
I mean,
bad.
it's like a movie,
And did you see that? Did you watch the dash cam or cop cam footage when he got pulled over recently on the Connecticut Thruway, wasted as hell?
I did not see that. No.
Yeah, no, it's also right around now. It's like maybe from the last like 6 weeks or something, like so relatively recent. It's I mean, this guy's going, 100 miles an hour down the Connecticut Thruway in a drunk, probably, who knows, definitely inebriated. And the cam footage is actually pretty hysterical.
Did
I
he get
mean,
arrested and charged
yeah,
with DUI?
yeah.
Well, because Tiger, and another talk about athletes behaving badly. Tiger Woods just got charged with the same thing.
And is in
Um,
rehab now.
and is in rehab now. If the interesting part is if you watch the footage, I had a hard time seeing how he failed the test. I'm no
I
expert in
haven't
it.
watched that one. I
I
mean,
have
he's
watched
fairly
it.
cogent, you mean?
Yeah, he is. But he refused the urinalysis test. So they got him on that. But I think if the evidence is solely related to his field sobriety test, he did pretty well. He wasn't slurring his words. I think you may see the state compromise a little bit on his case.
Well, especially if he already did some time in rehab.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, although, it was with the third time he's flipped a car.
How many lives does this guy have,
Yeah, no,
man?
that's, like 3 car flips to walk away from. That's a charmed life.
Yeah, well, in the last one, he almost died. And how Tiger's gotten, he's clearly, it seems, we don't know this, but it seems, I mean, don't sue us, Tiger, but it seems like he's hooked on painkillers.
Yeah,
And he's,
they went out of their way to say it wasn't alcohol in this one, at
yeah,
least.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, because he blew zero. He
yeah.
did do the breathalyzer, blew zero. But he said 27 surgeries, apparently. And that's, man, that's dude. Look, Tiger, if you're listening, it's time to hang it up. It's time to figure out your life, really, for the sake of your kids. And,
Yeah, and I mean I mean that wasn't he was prepping for the Masters. His
yes,
plan was to play the
yeah,
Masters.
yeah. It's just time to give it up and find something else, really.
Well, I guess since it defined you since you were 6 years old,
I get it. It's hard,
Yeah.
but you can't, I mean, you can't be having surgery after surgery after surgery and taking tons of whatever the painkiller was, hydrocodone or whatever. I mean, this is the result.
No, his management plan is a problem. I mean, pain management plan.
And his
Yeah.
management plan's a problem too, because they should not have him driving. Why is he driving a car?
Right. When was the last time you saw a Tiger commercial? You watch golf, so you might have
Forever.
seen some
Yeah, but
in
no,
there,
no,
but
there's not a ton
no,
anymore.
yeah, no, I'm
Like
trying to.
he had a national contract with Gatorade and other stuff, and that, yeah, it's not what it was.
I'm sure there's still like Nike branded golf gear or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, there, yeah.
but not any
It's
kind of
not as
national
sort of
campaigns.
prevalent, in the national culture as it used to be. No, of
No, not at all.
course, he's not a young guy anymore. He's what is he, 50 or something?
Yeah, yeah. No, he would be. Yeah, he would already be on the senior circuit. Um,
Yes.
you know, potentially. All
So
right,
there's two
Steve.
athletes behaving badly.
Yeah. Not my favorite segment. I
Oh,
did
I love
name
him.
it. I did name it.
Yeah, you did. No,
Yeah.
you did. You do get credit for that. You came up with that, like off the top of your head.
So I will. I'll take a victory lap on that one. All right, Steve. Who are the Washington Spears picking with the seventh pick?
Uh, I wrote a whole column on that actually, and so I did a draft board. I went through the exercise of coming up with a Washington first round draft board by evaluating team needs and then evaluating the players, and I came up with um, I'm gonna hopefully I get it right. Jeremiah Love, like the draft board of available Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. That was on the top of my draft board for the top three.
All that could or could not be there.
Yes. Well, I came up. I had five. You okay? You're gonna make me look it up real fast because I don't want to get my own draft board wrong. Give me 1 second here. Okay. My round one. So this was published Monday. If you want to go back on hogside.com and read this, it's published Monday. And I already went over all this on Hogside, so I'm not going to skip it and just go all the way down to the end here. Okay. So Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate, and David Bailey. That was my draft board.
Who do you think will be available at the top of your list?
I think Jeremiah Love will not be available. Somebody's going to grab him. So I think Sonny Styles will be the one.
That would be, oh, that's interesting. Two quick mini sports stories. about the draft, to tie it off and close us out, is one, have you seen that Pittsburgh hotels are only at 60% expected occupancy with
I
their
had not seen
estimates?
that. No.
So
Who
there's
the hell wants to
one.
go to Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh's a great city.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing that I found just absolutely crazy, they're shutting down school Thursday and
Why?
Friday
That's
because
dumb.
they claim they can't hold the draft and get kids to school. So they're shutting down school the
Talk
Thursday and
about a
Friday.
loss of priority.
Yeah, I
Good
mean, can you
grief.
believe that? I mean,
No,
I do like Pittsburgh, so I will ride with Pittsburgh, but that's insane. That's crazy.
that's crazy.
And that
Yeah.
should show the NFL that's a
I'm
city and
just
infrastructure
saying,
that's not can't host.
pick a better season. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And pick a better city. I mean, go to Miami for Christ's sake. Why haven't they been in Miami?
Well, I'm sure they will be soon enough. Well, we'll see you in DC next year.
So we talk about all this on the Hogslide podcast, which is released every Thursday, including this week. We will do Thursday, which is draft day, round one day. And you can see all of our regular written content on hogslide.com.
And if you're a public school kid in Pittsburgh, enjoy your days off.
You'll have some time on your hands, so listen to the show.
All right, we'll see you in a few weeks.